All right, first, I just want to thank Fiatt Independent Church, Christian Church, for allowing me to come here to speak today and be a guest speaker. And finally, I want to thank her for playing that beautiful, beautiful piano selection. And I promise you, I won't go no longer than 50 minutes. but if, you know, I might get a little emotional. I'm an emotional speaker, so, you know, pay that no attention. That's just the way I am. And for y'all who don't know me, my name is DeRocco Reed. All right. Growing up in Danville, one of the things you learn is not to forgive. Revenge at all costs. If somebody wrong or hurt you, you have to give it back. That's just the reality of where I come from. Don't get me wrong. In my parents' household, we was taught forgiveness. And I watched my parents live a life of forgiveness. But once I left the house, out in the streets of Danville, you taught something different. Because only the strong survive. And that's just where I come from. And today, this morning, I'm going to be speaking about forgiveness. And I'm going to say a quick prayer. Lord, just thank you for allowing me to be here and speak this morning. And just open up the ears and the heart so they can see the message and get something out of it. And just thank you for allowing me to, my family, travel here safely and blessed that we travel back. And we just thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. I Googled the word forgiveness, and it gave me this definition. Forgiveness is the intentional and voluntary process by which a victim undergoes change in feelings and attitude regarding offense. Let's go of negative emotions, such as vengefulness, with the increased ability to wish the offender well. Now, I don't know about you. I struggle with forgiveness. Let me give you a good example. Now, in my storage room in my house, I have this Rubbermaid box. And in this Rubbermaid box, I have my personal things. I call it my personal diary. And this, my mom gave it to me when I was a kid. And it's the first 25 years of my life. So I went in the storage room, and Janelle was in the storage room organizing it. And I was like, man, Janelle, you're really doing a good job organizing the storage room. And I look down and I see my Rubbermaid box, and I was like, let me go down memory lane. So I lift up the lid, lift up the box lid, and I didn't see none of my personal stuff in the box. So I'm confused. I'm like, what is going on? And I look up Janelle, I was like, Janelle, what happened to my personal stuff in this box? I organized it. And I'm like, you did what? She's like, I organized it. I was like, I didn't want this organized. She's like, well, I organized it. And I was mad. I mean, I was heated. I walked out of that storage room, and I made a vow to myself, I'm never going to forgive Janelle until she apologized to me. Well, days went to weeks, weeks went to months, months went to years, and she didn't apologize. And I'm so irritated. I'm like, she's supposed to apologize. Did she know what she did? She organized my box, and I didn't want to organize. And so, but one day it hit me that I was going to have to forgive her, even though she didn't apologize to me. Now, this is what forgiveness does not look like. Forgiveness is not an emotional or feelings thing. Forgiveness is not waiting on the person to say, I'm sorry, before you forgive them. And forgiveness is not getting the offender back and being forgiven. And forgiveness is not on a point system. Now, this is what forgiveness does look like. Forgiveness is a choice. Forgiveness is a heart thing. Forgiveness is no strings attached. And this is my favorite one. Forgiveness is being set free. We're going to go on a little story with Joseph, and some of y'all know Joseph in the Bible. And so I'm going to start off with Genesis chapter 37:3. Now Israel, that's Jacob. God gave Israel when he made the transformation change. So it's Jacob. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his sons, because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. Now, Jacob, the father, he loved Joseph. At this time, Jacob had 11 sons. He had 11 sons, and Joseph was the youngest. And Jacob loved Joseph more than, because he was born at his old age. And how much did he love him? He made an ornate robe for him. But there was a problem with this situation. Jacob got 10 other sons. What about his other 10 sons? What about how they feel about the situation, knowing that his father, Jacob, loved Joseph more than them? That's probably how they feel. Now, if I was one of the 10, I'd probably be jealous, knowing that my father loved this young man more than me. That's how I would have felt. And now you give him a robe? What about me? You couldn't make me a robe? And so now you have jealousy, and he probably was mad because of the robe. Now let's go on to Genesis chapter 37, 5 and 9. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. And he said to them, listen to this dream I had. Now that's the word you got to pay attention. Listen. You know, you got to tell your friends something, or your family something. You tell them to listen. I need you to listen. Pay attention to what I'm about to say. So church, I need y'all to put on y'all listening ears. It's just like when you tell your kids, put on your listening ears. He said, listen to this dream I had. We were buying the sheaves. We were buying the sheaves of grain. We were buying the sheaves of grain out in the field. When suddenly, my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. And his brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream, what he said. Now, they are already jealous of Joseph because that's Jacob, that's the one he loved the most. And they are already mad because of the robe. Now you have this young man, and you have to remember back in those days, whenever, if there was going to be a king or somebody was going to be ruled, whoever the firstborn or whoever was the oldest at the time got the first deal. They was going to become the king. Now you got this young man telling me I'm going to bow down to him. You got something coming to you. I'm already jealous of you. I'm already mad at you. And now you telling me this dream that I'm going to one day bow down to you. One day you're going to rule over me. But Joseph opened his big mouth again. He couldn't keep his mouth shut. He said, listen, I need y'all to put y'all listening ears on. Then he had another dream. He told his brother, he said, listen, I had another dream. And in this time, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me. Now, I don't know about y'all. You telling me the sun and the moon and the 11 stars going to bow down to you too? You going to rule over them too? We have a problem, Houston. Something ain't right with this. You are already telling me you're going to rule over that and that. You're going to go bow down to you too? Now, at this time, the 10 brothers, they was out tending the sheep, taking care of the sheep, and they was in one field, and then they decided to move to another field. And Joseph was at home with Jacob, that's his son he loved the most. And so he's at home, and Jacob's like, hey, Joseph, why don't you go out and see what's going on, check on your brother, see how the sheep going on. So Joseph asked this man, and this one will start from Genesis chapter 37, verse 17, 20. The man said this to Joseph, they have moved on from here. The man answered, I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. And here comes that dream. Let me stop there for a second. Now, like I said, they went from jealousy because of the father. They went from mad because of the robe. They went from hate because Joseph told them the dream what was going to happen. And now they plotting to kill Joseph. And you know what's crazy about this? Joseph has a name. Now they call him the dreamer. I mean, he's supposed to have a name. He's like, here comes the dreamer. And I mean, they must really, really hated Joseph that much that they plotted to kill him, his own brother. And then, let me read, keep going. Then they said to each other, come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns. And the cisterns is the pit they did so the water, when it comes, they have water to drink. And they say that a ferocious animal devoured him, and that will see what comes of his drink. And the only reason why they wanted to kill him, and this is my opinion, was to stop the drink. They wanted to stop the drink because they said, then we'll see what comes of his drink. But there's a problem. They didn't think their situation all the way through. They didn't think the action that was going to happen, what was going to be the reaction, or what was going to happen if they killed their brother. They didn't think everything all the way through. But thank God for Reuben. He was like, wait a minute, we can't kill Joseph. We can't do that. That's our brother. We can't kill him. But I want to pay attention to what Judah said in this situation. Genesis 37, verse 26, 27 says this. Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And the brothers agreed. Now the problem I have with this is, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. Well, if he is your brother, your own flesh and blood, you don't do what you're about to do to him. If he's your brother. And I'm glad they didn't kill Joseph, but the problem I have with this is, they sold him for money. They own flesh and blood, they own brother, they sold him for money. Now, like I said, they didn't think all this situation all the way through. What about the father? What are they going to tell the father? And you know, Jacob loved Joseph. And what they did was, they killed the animal, dipped the robe in the blood, and took it home and told the father that the animal killed him. They didn't think about the reaction of the father. They didn't think about the hurt and the pain and the suffering and the grieving and the mourning the father was going to be dealing with. Not able to see his son ever again. They didn't think about that. And so now they see their father in pain. They can't tell their father, we sold him as a slave. They can't tell him that, because then, I mean, they lied so much. You know, when you do something, you got to tell a lie, and you got to tell another lie, and cover up that lie, you got to tell another lie. That's what they was doing. And they just got caught up in the mess. But when they seen the look of their father, that hurt them. Now let's talk about Joseph. Let's talk about him a little bit. Now, Joseph has been betrayed by his brothers. Joseph, he comes from the same father that the other 10 come from. The same father, but they sold him as a slave. Now his enemy did this to him. I can see his enemy did it. You expect your enemy to do that to you. You expect that. But his own flesh and blood did this to him. Now, the problem I have with this is, Joseph might never see his father again. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was Joseph, they'd be telling a whole different story in the Bible. Now, you have to remember, Joseph was a young man when this happened to him. He was young. He still had sour milk on his breath. That's how young he was. Now, if I was Joseph, I'd have been hurt by this. I'd have been very hurt by this. And I've been like, my own flesh and blood did this to me. And each day that I was a slave, and each day I sat in that prison, the only thing that would have fueled me and made me survive would have been my anger. And what I mean about that, I'd have been like, if I ever get out of this situation, my brother's gonna pay for what they did. That's what, if that was me, I don't know about y'all, but me, you know, my brothers did this too, that's what my thought process would be. They're gonna have to pay for this. And that would have made me survive during that time. But I thank God Joseph's not me. I thank God Joseph took his circumstances and used it to make him stronger in God. Now, at this time, Joseph, when he got out of prison, he became the second in command of Egypt. Now, Joseph's dreams got him into prison. And Joseph, being able to interpret the Pharaoh, the king Egypt dreams, got him out of prison. The same thing that got him in prison, got him out. Now, at this time, the dream was, the first 7 years, there's going to be crops. There's going to be abundance of crops. And so he put Joseph in charge of that, and he stocked it up because he knew the next 7 years was going to be a drought. And so he stocked it up. And during this time, when the drought happened, people had to come to Egypt to get grain. You know who had to come to Egypt to get grain? Can anybody tell me? That's right. His brothers had to come to Egypt to get grain because the crops was a drought. Now, okay, Genesis 45 and 3, chapter 45, verse 3 to 5 says this. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. And the very first thing he asked them is my father still living? Joseph loved his father. That's the very first thing he wanted to know. But his brothers was not able to answer him because they was terrified of his presence. Now, y'all remember the dream Joseph told them one day they was going to be bowing down to him? Here's the dream. It's happening. And the reason why they was terrified of him, they remember what they did to him 10, 13 years ago. First they tried to kill him, and then they sold him as a slave. I'd be terrified too if I was one of the brothers. This man is in power. He's the second in command. He's right under the Pharaoh. And this man can do anything to me that he wants to. Ain't nothing I can do about it because this man is in power. If he wanted to throw me in prison, he can. If he wanted to kill me, he can. But then Joseph said to his brothers, he's like, come close to me. And when they had done, he said, I am your brother, Joseph. He reminded them who he was. I am your brother, Joseph. And he was like, the one you sold into Egypt. And he reminded them, he hadn't forgot what they done to him. I'm your brother, the one you sold into Egypt. But this is my favorite part. And now, do not be distressed. And do not be angry with yourself for selling me here. Because it was to save lives that God sent me here ahead of you. The part I want to focus on is do not be distressed. do not be angry with yourself for selling here. And the reason why I want to focus on this part is, you know, when you do something wrong, or something bad happens to you, especially say if something happened to you, or you did something bad to somebody, and now you want forgiveness, or you want forgiveness from the other person. And as these brothers, they carry pain, they carry suffering, they carry the regret of what they did. You have to remember, that happened years ago. They carry the burden of watching their father every single day suffer because of his son. They carry this on their shoulders. Just watching their father in that pain, they carry this. But Joseph told them, I forgive you. And when somebody, you hear those words, I forgive you, especially after you did something to somebody, that pain, that suffering, that regret, all that comes off of your shoulders. You've been set free. You've been set free from what you've been carrying for years. That's why that's important. And I like Joseph's perspective, how he looked at it. He said, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. If Joseph would have never been in Egypt at the time, there would have never been no grain. Nobody knew the next 7 years, after the first good year, 7 years, that it was going to be a drought. There would have been no rain. You know how the world is? There's no food to eat. It's a dangerous place. And so, God sent Joseph ahead. But he had to use his brothers. He had to use that dream, and his brothers sent him ahead. And sometimes, bad things have to happen. And so, in Romans 5, verse 6 through 8, you see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely would anyone die for a righteous person. For a good person, someone might possibly die, they're God. But God demonstrated his own love for us, and this while we were still sinners. And Christ died for us. Now, like I said before, this is what forgiveness looks like. Forgiveness is a choice. Forgiveness is a heart thing. Forgiveness is no strings attached. And forgiveness is being set free. Like I said, I watched my parents live a life of forgiveness. When I was young, my dad pastored this church. I think he was there for about 15, 18 years. And there was these 4 members. And, they gave my dad problems. After problem, after problem. They gave him so much problem, he ended up having a heart attack. Yes, there was other calls, but the day grind, dealing with those 4 members, he ended up having a heart attack. Now, as a young man, I'm sitting here watching all of this going on. And my perspective is different. What was going on? Now, when I was about, I think, 21, 22, the 4 members, they couldn't be in control of the church. So they had to do what they had to do to get my daddy out of the church. So they start stirring up the members. They start rocking the boat. And they finally got enough people in the church to vote my dad out. I'm a young man. My perspective is different. 21, 22, I can remember this day like it was yesterday. I'm sitting back at the church at a fitness meeting, watching these people accuse my dad of many of things. I'm not saying my dad was perfect, but what they was accusing my dad was just outrageous. And I'm sitting there, and I'm heated, and I'm sitting there like, I can't believe this is going on. This is church folks who's doing this. This is not my dad enemies, this is church folks who's doing this. And that was going on, and I finally had enough. And I snapped. I was in the back going off. I was in the back calling people the devil. That's how mad I was. And there was this man named Mr. Buck. He walked back there, and he said, "Rocco, you need to calm down." And I stood up, I said, "You know what? Forget this church." And I walked out. And I'm outside. And that's when they voted my dad at the church. And this lady, Mr. Butler, his wife, she came to me, and she gave me a hug. And I started crying. I couldn't believe what happened before my eyes. One, I couldn't believe God didn't save my father. And so I stopped going to church after that. But what surprised me was how my dad acted. I was ready to go into church and excuse my French, cause some hell. That's what I was ready to do. But my dad's perspective was different. He forgave them. And I'm like, thinking to myself, how can you forgive? They had you vote out of the church. They accuse you of all this, and you forgive them? How can you do that? And that's when I learned what forgiveness was all about. And this is going to be the last thing I'll say right here. If any of y'all in here have somebody to forgive, or you need to apologize to somebody, you better begin to do it. Because that person might not be here tomorrow. Thank you and God bless.